So, thank you very much, Mr. Professor. Mr. Dean, thank you very much for having me here. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your interest. Even if there is a sunny afternoon outside, I even appreciate it more that you have found the way to come here. You have heard my curriculum vitae. Thank you very much for this. Just to commend you on your interest in foreign affairs and international relations. I think we need a lot of these people in interest seeing the world how it is today. For today's lectures, I wanted to speak about the Swiss speciality in its constitution. Obviously, every constitution reflects the history, the experience, the geography, the common aspiration of its people, so every constitution is unique and special. In our case, it produced something called direct democracy, and this is something I would like to speak about. But first of all, let me check. Is the sound okay? Like this? Is everybody's hearing me? Okay, good. First of all, what is direct democracy? And as a lazy student, I also checked on Wikipedia and I found the following definition. Direct democracy or pure democracy is a form of democracy in which people decide on policy initiatives directly. This differs from the majority of currently established democracies, which are representative democracies. You elect somebody, he goes to parliament, he does the job for you, and you choose again in 4 years if you like him or not, or you change politicians. It's something different in direct democracy. But maybe just to warm you up a little bit, I kindly ask you to take out your mobile phones. Please take out your mobile phones. You don't have to worry about the mobile phones. They will not be confiscated. I would like to make a small quiz with you. So just to check out a little bit your knowledge about Switzerland, which is, I suppose, not very high. That's not important. But it has something to do with the presentation. Please join Carotte up on carotte.it. When you have done this, already some people have, already Lulu and Bolchai have done it, very good. And then you put in the code, and please join me in. There will be no loser, there will be a prize for the winner actually, so it's, everybody else will remain anonymous. And you can change, I think, your name, so we don't know who you are. Alberto, you have to play too, huh? You have to take your phone, carotte.it, put in the pin. Some more, please, is it possible? Anyway, we will ask you some questions about Switzerland. And to each question, there will be possible answers. And you have to choose the right icon on your mobile to the right answer. And please be aware that it is time sensitive. You don't have enormous amount of time to respond, so you have to just take a go for it, and we'll have a look afterwards. Anybody having trouble in connecting? Anybody willing to connect having trouble, or is it okay? It's okay? Okay, it's time sensitive, so let's try with the first question. Are you ready? I have 5 questions. When did Switzerland join the EU? 2002, it's the red one. 92, none of the above. 2016. There you're very good, very bright. 67 answers, 68. That's what I'm saying. In Turkey, everybody is very good on media, social media, and internet, much better than in Switzerland. So what was it? None of the above. We are not members of the EU, unfortunately, maybe. This is the thing. Next question. Stogan, bravo. When did Switzerland introduce women's right to vote on the federal level? 1934, 68, 71, or 91 on the federal level? I see the first line, not everybody working here, but you have it in your mind. It was in 1971, rather late. I will come to that also. Very good. Okay, shall we go to the next question? What are the national languages of Switzerland? And how many are there? So, I'll let you choose. German, French, Italian, Swedish is the yellow one. German, French, Italian, the Romansh is the green one, for those who can't read it there. What do you think? It's not the Swedish. Who said Swedish? I'm Swiss, not Swedish. And it's not Turkish either. Nice try. Okay. Very good. Very good. So are you ready for the next question? When did Switzerland join the UN? 2002, 45, 2015, 1986. Okay, it was 2002, 20 right answers. We have some study to do here. Thank you very much for participating. No, it's not over. We still have one question. Sorry. How often can the Swiss vote? Every 4 years, every year, up to 4 times a year, up to 2 times a year. Don't forget direct democracy. Up to 4 times a year we are calling to cast a vote. So, thank you very much for participating. I will come back to all these questions and answers during my presentation, but maybe we call for Mr. or Mrs. Eine Rose. Oh, that's not true. You have a very good professor here. Can I ask you to do this? You have a Swiss expert here. We have a Swiss expert here. Madame, don't open it. It's a Swiss Army knife, so be careful. Anyway, so thank you very much for participating. As I said, I will come back to these questions, but these questions and maybe some strange replies for you has something to do with the system of direct democracy. To the outline of my presentation, first to explain to you a little bit how this works, the direct democracy system, this dealing with diversity in Switzerland. Then to show you explicitly how this impacts on our foreign policy, and give you by that 2 examples, our relationship to the EU and our stance in the UN, and then provide some conclusions, and then we can go ahead with questions and answers. Okay. Voila, we are a diverse population. We speak Swiss, meaning 4 languages. German, actually German, I'm a German, Swiss German, coming from the Swiss German, it's the majority, but we have a slight odd thing that we read in German, we write in German, but we do speak Swiss German. And when we do speak Swiss German, Germans do not understand normally. And so it's the fact as a young child, when you go to school the first day, the first thing you will have to do is being confronted to a foreign language, German, because you never spoke it before at home. So we have a first step to do already there. Then we have French, Italian, and Romansh, which is a very specific language in the mountains, but they're all equally treated. They're all official and national languages. However, there is a myth that every Swiss speaks 4 languages. Don't be afraid. Everybody speaks 1 language and maybe a second and maybe a third, but it's not true that every Swiss speaks all the 4 languages. And this, go back again. We also have 25% residents with a foreign passport in Switzerland. Out of 8 million, more than 2 million are foreign. Have a foreign passport, and because we had strong immigration communities, Portuguese is widely spoken too, for example, and it shows that we have a lot of diversity in our country. Okay. But we also have a diversity of religion. As those who have read European history, you know that religion, between the fight between the struggle between Catholic Church and Protestant churches was very cruel and very important. And there was another layer of complexity in the Swiss system, that 50% of our population were Catholics and 50% were Protestant, making it even more complex to find the balance between all these different groups. Nowadays it looks a little bit different in the sense that we also have over 20% now saying that they do not have any religious affiliation, and due to immigration we also have 5% Muslim community, Muslim background. For the political science students, that's one of my favorite or the most important thing. In order to find a well-balanced mechanism, we have three pillars in our constitution. The first one being the federal system. We have copied this from the American system. We have the same system with two chambers in parliament protecting the states. And in our system, the cantons, the pillars of our country, they remain sovereign. They have a lot of power. They are, for example, responsible for security. We have 26 police forces in our small country. Every canton has its own police force. We have 26 education departments. We have 26 health departments. The cantons are very important for our citizens. And the 26 cantons make one Switzerland. Underneath, we have the municipalities. We have over 2,250 municipalities making this federal system on a three level. The second pillar of our system is the subsidiarity. Subsidiarity means nothing else that you should try to take the decision at the lowest level possible. What you can decide at the municipal level will be decided there, and only the things which need a cantonal reasoning, they will be decided there, and like this. This makes it very close to the needs of the citizens. And the third pillar is the direct democracy. So we have three pillars in our constitution: federalism, subsidiarity, and direct democracy. And these three pillars make it possible that people with so many different languages, different religions, different backgrounds are able to live together, in my opinion. We have two main instruments. That's really what you should take with you. There are two different instruments for direct democratic participation. We have these instruments on all three levels: federal level, cantonal level, and municipal level, and they vary sometimes a little bit. So I will refrain myself only to the federal level. We have, on the one hand, initiative, the right of initiative. If you want to change something, you can do this in Switzerland by changing the constitution. You propose an article in the constitution. You only need 100,000 signatures on a paper, valid signatures of Swiss citizens. And if this is the case, the government and parliament are obliged to act on it and to discuss and propose what they think about it, and then the people will vote about it. And if the initiative goes through, it needs a double majority because we are in a federal system. Double majority meaning you need the majority of the people voting, 50% plus one of the people voting, plus you need the majority of the cantons. So out of 26 cantons, you need 14 cantons in order to change the constitution. Once our initiative has been accepted, it has changed the constitution has changed. That's why also we vote sometimes on strange things like horn of cows and all these things, because people were able to gather 100,000 signatures, and that's why we have to vote on it. On the other side, we have the referendum. There is one specificity of a mandatory referendum where you have to put it on the referendum because it changes the constitution if the government proposes that. So it's a little bit the same thing like the initiative. When you change the constitution, you need a double majority. But the more interesting thing is the optional referendum. And this is an ex post control. Every law adopted by the Swiss parliament at the end has a clause saying This law will enter into effect after the period of a referendum, which is 100 days, or if the referendum is taken after the vote of referendum if it is positive. Parliament is not able to implement laws by its own. It needs the approval of the people if they take the referendum. For this, you only need 50,000 signatures. The vote is valid if the majority of the people voting say yes. This is a very powerful instrument to control Parliament and government, because they know that they must have more than a simple majority than in Parliament. If you want to win a referendum, you need a bigger majority to be on the safe side. And this forces people in the Parliament, parties, to find compromises and to find bigger majorities. And please don't be confounded. Direct democracy is about rules and is about a system which is clearly stated when do you vote and about what do you vote. It's a bottom-up approach, and there are systems like that in Switzerland, there are systems in California and other American states, but it's not the same thing when elites, presidents are saying, let's ask the people. This is a plebiscite, it's a top-down approach, has nothing to do with it, because it's the people on the top who decide when do you vote. In such a system, it's the system deciding when you vote. Elites do not have a choice to put it in front of the people. It's a very powerful instrument for the people to have something to say, to have something to say in the system. Brexit is an awkward thing. Somebody decided, let's put it on a referendum. In a system which is not foreseen for that. They don't know how to deal with it because it was not foreseen in their system. Huh? And this is a top-down approach, and it's very weird for us to see that, how people don't know how to do it. So let's please take it up. Two instruments. You have the right of initiative, you have the right of control through referendum, and it's a bottom-up approach. Please don't misunderstand me, there is no absolute power. Also, Switzerland is a mixed constitution. It's everything about controlling powers through separation of powers. People might have the final word in Switzerland, but they do not have, they have the last, not the last word in the sense that they do not can decide on everything. There is a control, there's a framework of control. Let's put it, because of social security costs, let's vote about killing everybody over 60. Obviously, this would be a strange vote. It would not be possible. Because there are controls. We have 4 pillars. People have a very important vote, a word, but we have obviously, like every democracy, the institutions of the parliament, the government, and the judiciary who make sure that this separation, this control of power is built in the system. There is no absolute power. People do not have the right to vote about everything. It is a typical mixed constitution with a lot of direct democracy in it. More voting in Switzerland, as we said, we have 4 times a year. There is fixed by the Chancellery, 1 Sunday in winter, 1 Sunday in spring, 1 Sunday in summer, and 1 Sunday in autumn. We know that we are going to vote. We get the things which we are going to vote by post. And depending on where you live, you might have 2 things on the federal level, initiative or referendum. You have to fill out there, yes, no. Then depending on the canton where you live, you might have 3 or 4 items you have to decide on the cantonal level. And then depending on the village you live in, you might even have, in Zurich sometimes you have up to 10 things. So sometimes 10, 2 and 2 makes 14 decisions you have to take. If you want to take it seriously, you have to read half of your Sunday. You should go through. Otherwise you ask your wife what you think, or you ask your husband. They will decide on you until you vote together, or you have a small discussion at home. Or you just look what government and parliament is proposing to decide, but it is a little bit of work in order to survive in the system. 4 times a week we do normally then cast by post, and that's fixed and foreseen in the system. And yes, we voted rather late to women's right to vote on federal level. It's on 71. It has started before on the cantonal level. Many cantons have given it to the female right to vote earlier. It's a little bit of testing ground in the federal system that you start first on the cantonal level and then you go to the federal level. But I agree with you, it's very late. only question I will ask you, if only the male population in your countries would decide on the same issue, would you have been earlier or later than we? But it's not an excuse. So how does it work? One of the reasons why I think it's working, because in Switzerland normally you give a price tag to it. You should not vote about something if you don't know what the consequences are. Let me give you an example. You're living in a nice Swiss village and you see that your neighbor village has a nice outdoor swimming pool. Then you're wondering, why do we not have ourselves in this village a swimming pool? You go to the next assembly of the city and you propose we should build a swimming pool as well. If it's voted yes, the city council will then produce a voting decision saying we can do a swimming pool, but the investment costs and the running costs will cost you so much, so we will have to increase taxes for the next 10 years for 5%. Are you still willing to vote yes? And this makes a difference. As an economist, if you have a price tag to a decision, this makes the difference for the people to decide, is this really worth or is it not worth? I myself would then say, maybe it's better I just go to the other village, they pay for it, and I just have my swim there, and I don't have to pay for a swimming pool in my village. And that's the system. It only works when you have a price tag on it. Same example on the federal level. Everybody was laughing when we talked about this. There were nice people saying, we are working too much, public health issues, we should have 6 weeks holidays per year. Paid holidays. Sounds great. Economy Suisse, that's the Swiss TUSIAD and other associations said, well, yes, it would be nice, but we have to pay it. You do it. We might have to unleash people. We have to might change fabrics. It will cost us too much, and we are not in a competitive mood, so it will have a price. People voted no. Crazy people, but because it was a price tag on it, and they decided it's not worth it. So to sum it up, I see certain conditions for such a system to work. You need a cooperative element. You need the engagement of the citizens, you need an ownership, and you need also subsidiarity so that you're as close as possible to citizens. You need this price tagging, you need the financial responsibility. Again, Brexit, nobody was really sure what we were voting for in UK. It might be better to know what's the price to pay for it before voting. You need compromises. You must be able to compromise. It's something you can learn. The system forces you to make compromises, and the losing side must accept it. It's not so bad, because in the life of a Swiss, you lose so often and you win so often, to 4 times voting every year, that it's okay. You learn how to deal with losses on the political system. It needs also a regularity so that people get used to the system, that people are aware that they are responsible for the system. And it should be also clear that questions can be raised twice. It's not only because people have voted once that it's clear forever. Situation may change, the mood may change, the government may still think it's a good idea, pressure groups may think it's a good idea. So you should be aware that in such a system there is no absolute decision. Everything can evolve, so it can be possible to repeat. From my perspective, it has clear advantages. You have a popular support which is very strong in this system. Once you have gained a vote, you can say you have the backing of the people. And this is quite a strong political message. It increases cohesion in our system with these different languages and people. It forces the system to compromise in order to find bigger majorities, because otherwise this danger of referendum makes it very difficult to pass laws. That's why we also, for the last 40 years, we always had big coalitions in the government. Inclusiveness. We have also radical elements in our society, but most of the time we can you want to make a communist system in Switzerland? Please be my guest. Gather 100,000 signatures and we vote on it. And then nobody can say it was not possible. It is possible. That's why sometimes we vote about strange things, but it brings all these more minorities, radical elements into the channel of the main politics. And this is really very important in our system. Emotions, politics is emotional. But in our system, we get emotional about questions, about items, not about our opponents. We don't like the guy who votes against something we think is good, but we get more angry about the question put in front of us instead of getting angry about the person who is against us, because we are voting more on issues than about persons. It takes out emotions in the people. It empowers the citizens. And last point, I think it's very important, it forces the elites in Switzerland to remain modest and close to the people. We can control them. We not only vote, elect the parliament, we only tell them if we are not happy by abolishing the laws and by proposing new initiatives. It's a strong and powerful element of controlling the elites of the country. Don't underestimate this. Direct democracy is a strong instrument to controlling elites. Now, the same thing goes to foreign policy. There is a link there. I will give you two examples. First, to the EU and then to the UN. But let me start first quickly the strategic priorities of Switzerland in the foreign affairs. We have the principle of universality. We have diplomatic relations with all the states. And then we have strategic priorities. First, geographically, our neighboring countries, Germany, France, Italy, Austria, and Liechtenstein. These are our neighbors, all very important countries for us. And the EU, encompassing everything, is our most important partner. Then we have focal countries all over the world. Turkey is one of them because of its regional role. And then we have thematic issues, peace and security, sustainable development and prosperity. Under peace and security, we also offer good services. For example, we take care of the US representation in Iran because they do not have diplomatic relations. We did the same for the USA in Cuba until they they took up diplomatic relations again. We are doing the same for Russia and Georgia and for Georgia and Russia. So that's something we do on a regular basis. Now to our EU policy. It's one of the most difficult issues because we are not a member and we are very closely linked to the EU anyway. It's a close partnership. It's for us the most important political and economic partner. We are in the heart. Turkey is at the periphery of the EU. We are really in the heart of the EU, and we are culturally very close. We speak three or four languages, are European languages, and we share the same values and ideas, and we have a very close relationship. Economically, it's very interesting. You will not know that. We are about 8 billion people. EU is 500 million people. We are always third or fourth ranking trading partner. Every day, working day, $1 billion is crossing our frontier with the EU. It's third or fourth trading partner of the EU is Switzerland. Just imagine how integrated the economy must be to make it possible. Now, we are not members because we have voted on occasions on that and people always have rejected. So we have decided, we have found a pragmatic solution which we call the bilateral approach. It's a package of agreements. There are over 120 agreements with the EU. And they basically allow us to participate to the common market in the goods sector, together with an agreement on free movement of persons and our association to Schengen and Dublin area. So it's a very multi-layered cooperation. It's a tailor-made contractual solution. However, we pay a price because we are not members, so we cannot decide on all these regulations decided by the EU, and most of them we have to take them over because we are participating to the common market. So that's a price we pay. We feel it's payable because we don't want to be independent as it is defined in our country, not to become a member of the EU. So there is a tension in there that we need to integrate for economic and security reasons, but we do not want to become a member because of the felt sovereignty loss we would incur about that. So this tension is one of the main topics we have with the EU, that we always have to find solutions when the problems are coming, because we are institutionally quite weakly bound together. Here you see a selection of votes we had about EU affairs. You see that people vote regularly. They voted no to the European Economic Area. They voted no to negotiations with the EU for membership. And this shows you that our foreign policy towards the EU is driven by popular decisions. And this is cause of tension, because every time we go to Brussels, we can negotiate something, and then we have to tell them, sorry guys, we have to ask our people. Makes them crazy in Brussels, I understand them, but that's our system. And this is the cause of tension, and this is why our relation with the EU, being pragmatically seen, very successful economically and security-wise, and culturally, but institutionally quite complex for Brussels and for us. We have actually a referendum in May of this year, where we have to take over some Schengen development, and this could put us into problem again if we fail to say yes. We'll see what's happening there. Second example, Switzerland and the UN. We are only members since 2002. It's a little bit weird, you know that Geneva is a big regional headquarter of the United Nations since 1945. Clusters of trade, environment, human rights, humanitarian affairs. But we only were members since 2002. How comes? 86, we asked for the first time to people, would you like to become member of the UN? They said 75% no. Because they were fearing that entering into a collective security institution like the UN would hamper with our neutrality. 2002, life has changed, the Iron Curtain has fallen, the UN has become very much global, and it seemed that it was working. People said yes, 55%. Now we are thinking of becoming a candidate, we are candidate of becoming member 22, 23, a non-permanent member of the Security Council. We have the same discussion at home. Is it compatible with our neutrality? Big discussion for us. But you see also it's possible to vote twice on the things on the same issues. Things can change, situation can change. Let's vote again. Well, this brings me to the conclusion. As I said, direct democracy is an interesting element for Switzerland. It helps to balance our different interests. 3 pillars: federalism, subsidiarity, direct democracy. Impact on international relations, very huge. However, it helps us also sometimes in telling bigger problems. You know, we voted, and we cannot go back and tell them the different thing. You have to accept it's a democracy. You can't be against democratic votes. So it can be used also as a negotiating argument. Repetition is possible. The problem is, like in everywhere else, you see it, the complexity of international relations. This globalization, the multiplication of actors makes it also more difficult for us to make it compatible with international relations with our direct democratic system. It's a challenge we're up, and we as Swiss diplomats, we have to think about that every day. Anyway, so thank you very much for your attention. I have finished my presentation here. I think we still have time for questions and answers. And I think, well, you can join us on Facebook. We have, I think, microphones. You can ask questions by microphones, but you can also write them if you if you connect to this page. You can also write questions. Rushing you through here. Any questions? Do we have questions?
I have a question.
Yes, please.
Dear Mr. Ambassador, thanks for this inspirational talk. Actually, my question is about the diffusion of domestic political institutions, because it's a very important question for democratization literature. So my question is about the transferability of the Swiss model. So do you think, is it a result of some Swiss exceptionalism, or can it be transferred elsewhere with some fine-tuning? Thank you.
Thank you. It's the question I'm fearing most now, mostly at the times. I don't think we can export this system. It's a very specific system to a very specific situation. Now, I must also say that once you know the system, you will not like to live in another system. And then I ask myself the question, why should I be able to vote so often and other people should not be able? That's a question I just put in front of you. I see in Europe, at least, around Switzerland, for example, in Germany, there was a time ago in in southern Germany, there was a discussion in Stuttgart about the railway station, a big construction site which would have changed the whole city. And people suddenly just started to wonder, why do these Swiss blokes down there vote on everything, and we are just told we have to accept this? And they ask for direct democratic elements, they ask for participative elements. I also referred to France, where the Gilets jaunes, the yellow jackets, before becoming violent, they also ask for direct participation in the decision making. I also see that in northern Italy, Lega Nord is asking why the Swiss can vote and we cannot vote. So there is a push when you are in a democratic system for more participation. But you need some conditions, and you need you need some conditions, and then maybe you can develop your own system if it's feasible. I would say our system is not exportable. The idea of direct democracy is very much vivid, and it's not just Switzerland having it. As I said, California has a very strong direct democratic elements built in its constitutions, as do many other US states in the eastern part. So I like the system, and I would not like to lose it. So I ask you back, what can you do to bring it to your place?
There are some questions.
Okay, I just take the first one. Switzerland and Turkey, it's an important relation, as I told you, for us. It's a focal point. For us, it is important that Turkey remains part of the European family. We are both members of the European Council, and we would like to make sure that Turkey is very much in our camp in the sense of sharing the values about rule of law, democracy, and liberty. We have three operational axes. One is the cooperation and security. Turkey has a lot of issues also because of its neighborhoods, and we cooperate there. We have a lot of migration questions. That's the second axis. Turkey is very generous in hosting 4 million people, refugees in this country. We are part of Schengen, so the whole relationship, migration, is very important to us, and we cooperate quite closely with Turkey. And the third one is economic. We have more than 600 companies, Swiss companies based in Turkey. We're a big investor. Turkey is an economic hub for us, even if there are difficulties. We have modernized our free trade agreement between EFTA and Turkey last year. We have signed it. It's being ratified, so we are giving our part in making sure that this economic relationship institutionally is up to the time. So Turkey is an important country. It works well. We are concerned also about the questions of rule of law and human rights, and we are discussing this very openly with our Turkish colleagues. Any question from the sound? You're right. I don't want to speak. You're right. That's good. Mickey Mouse. Let me take the anonymous one about the minorities. I think in our system we'd go an extra miles for minorities. The fact that 1,000 people speak a Romansh nobody understands, and we deal it as a national and official language, translating most of our laws into that language, shows the respect we have for cultures, for different cultures. The federal system with this double majority protects minorities. Nothing will be possible without the minority speaking French part or Italian part agreeing to something major. So there's a built-in system where minorities, in my opinion, I might then ask some representative of minorities, because I'm German speaking, so I'm part of the majority. But I think we really take an extra mile to make sure that minority are well catered in our system. Obviously, there are real power things. But I think, and this is done different, but normally I would say ethnic and religious minorities, they are rather well protected because the system is made in such a way that minorities are well protected, and this is one of the big aims we have in this system, and which makes it work rather well. Is this, I don't know, Mickey Mouse, anyway. And then, with the first one, a couple of issues. Migration issues is always a big problem. We have, as I told you, 8 million population. We have free movement of persons, which is an EU thing which we are participating. It's very good for us economically, but it means that we have 25% foreigners living in our country. That's huge, huh? And there are votes on the people of conservative right saying there are too many foreigners. And these are always very tricky votes. So we had one vote where they said, we have too many, we should introduce quotas again. And quotas is not possible if you don't want to have trouble with the EU, because the free movement of persons does not allow for quotas. And the text, the initiative was written in such a way that it was a little bit confusing, so people actually voted yes. And the cantons, the majority voted yes. That was 2014. So we had a big trouble, because we had to tell our EU friends, you know, we have a problem here. Free movement of persons, we might have to introduce quotas. EU told us, you know, that's your problem, not our problem. Deal with it. That was the help we got from Brussels. Fair enough, they have to protect their common market. So we went back. Government said, people's will is people's will. We will introduce quotas. They proposed a draft legislation, sent it to Parliament. It took 2 years, obviously, a lot of discussion, a lot of in-house fighting. Sent it to Parliament and said, we are going to put it into place like the initiative said. We were very worried about our relations to the EU. And suddenly in Parliament people said, well, but this is crazy. I mean, you cannot do that because we will lose our integration to the EU market if we implemented it like this. And they decided to implement it in such a way which it did not fully respect the initiative's text, the constitutional text, but did respect fully the free movement of persons. So the Parliament played the role of mediator. It means that the Parliament also has a role to play in the system. When I said the people have the last word, yes, but the Parliament has a word too, and they said this. So we were lucky, it was okay like this, but then obviously those who said for the initiative, you did not respect the people's will. And then the Parliament and government said, well, if you don't agree to it, make an initiative, and let's vote again, or take a referendum on this law if you don't like it. They did not take a law on the implementing law. They did not take a referendum on the implementing law. So we can assume that people were happy the way it was implemented because it produced a compromise between our international engagement and the national needs. This is one of the ways it's dealt in reality about this direct democracy needs and the reality of foreign affairs. That is a question which will come up again because now there's an initiative clearly stipulating. It's coming up, I think in 1-2 years we will vote on it, clearly stipulating the end of the agreement of free movements of persons with the EU. And then we have clear questions, we will see how they work. That's a one question. Other, do you have any vote? Yes, please.
Thank you, Ambassador. Thank you, Ambassador, for the presentation. It was really eloquently presented. My question actually based on what you just highlighted recently about immigration in the EU. My question will actually ask, what were some of the reasons stated for not actually joining the EU outside of giving away some of your sovereignty? As you realize, there's a real populist movement going on with some European countries, and some of the reasons cited is actually too many foreigners in the EU. Can you please highlight that, or maybe try to give a clear response towards what were some of the clear reasons given for not joining the EU? As you know, immigration is one of the key reasons given. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your kind words. It was actually the intention of the government to join the EU. It was always in the line of parties that to join the EU, but it was always refused by the people on the grounds that we think the EU is very important for Europe. It has brought us peace for the last 70 years, but we like our system. From our historical experience, we have never been invaded for the last 2 centuries, and we always thought we will remain neutral, we stay in our mountains. It's a state of mind, you know. Let's stay out of the business. They do their things, we try to find pragmatic solutions, but we do not participate. It goes in the UN and the EU. And the main normal reason would be to link our direct democratic system with the EU needs of laws imposed by the EU Parliament would have made it very difficult our participation as a member. This is one of the main reasons given, I think, by our population. And back there, I think it's also this historical experience that we always fared well by being a little bit aloof from everything happening around us. which doesn't make sense if you look at the economic figures of integration we have. But because of our direct democratic system, we have to take into account the stance of the people. Yeah, the turnout of people, that's a good question. It's lower than you would expect normally. If there are many issues, if there are interesting issues, it can go up to 80%, but this is really now a question of life and death. Normally, if there are only normal things, I would say 50% is a good outcome, a good outturn. It's normally at this national level, it's 48-50%. Not very high, but again, I don't want to abuse about my wife, but she says, I'm voting in favor, I'm voting against. I said, listen, you don't go, I don't go, we stay even, we stay at home. So it's also this kind of discussion. Yes, neutrality, we have the concept of constant permanent neutrality. Neutrality normally means, by the international law standard, means I'm neutral when there is a war going on. Then I take a neutrality stance. We have developed it further since the Vienna Congress of 1815, saying that we will have a permanent neutrality and that we will not go into a bloc. We are not members of NATO. We will stay neutral. In order to protect this neutrality, we always had an army, and we used the concept of armed neutrality. Nobody will take our mountains because we will protect it, and it suited all the big powers around that nobody had a chance of taking over the passes through the mountains because it was in small Switzerland. And for this we needed an army, so we needed a military industrial complex, and that's why you also sometimes do business on the military ground. We not only buy from other countries, we also produce and export to other countries, because our neutrality concept is not a pacific one in the sense that we don't, we just say we are neutral and don't do things. Our neutrality concept is the one of a protected neutrality. We should be ready to defend ourselves in case our neutrality is attacked by anybody. That's why we need also military-industrial exchange. I gave you the three axes, security cooperation, migration cooperation, and economic affairs, where we think they're the most beneficial for both sides. In the migration affairs, what we witnessed over a period of many years we were an immigration country, we were a poor country. Many Swiss had to leave the country to make fortunes, and then we became an immigration country for the last 50 years. You witnessed this in Turkey in 10 years. You were an immigration country, you became a transit country, and suddenly because of the war in Syria, you became an immigration country in over 10 years. You have to build up all these management skills of, you need asylum laws, you need integration laws, you need revocation centers. We have a lot of experience, so we work very closely with the Ministry of Interior and the Director General of Migration Management, not just for projects in the sense of helping you, which you don't really need, but in exchanging experiences. How do you do an asylum law? We have so many refugees. I think I don't give you a secret if you realize that many of those people will not go back because they have been born here. They are living now here for 6-7 years. What does it mean for integration purposes? Integration is a very difficult task. You need laws, you need experiences, and this is something we think we can exchange and provide for the Turkish authorities. That's one of the examples. And then economically, I mean, investments are not good at the moment because of the situation. A lot of people are attending, but don't be mistaken. Turkey has a big potential. You're a G17 country. You have a young population. You have an educated population. You will be, in 10, 12 years, you will be G12, G13. You have a huge internal domestic market, and you are a perfect hub for the whole MENA region. So every Swiss company wanting to work in this area, must have a hub, must have a place in Turkey. So there is a huge potential there. Yes, thank you for this question about the situations vote result contrast. It often happens. Not often, no, not true, but it happens that initiative by definition almost are against government policies, because there are people who are not happy with the government. That's why they want to change things, and they use the initiative to change things. And what happens often is, at the beginning of the initiative, when you make the polling, everybody say this is a wonderful thing, we will vote in favor of it. And then the campaign started, and then you see that, well, it cost a lot, wow, that means this, and the people are being educated, and they think, but this could mean also this, and normally initiatives go down the road, and they will not pass this double majority. But sometimes the government then, because it sees that there's really an issue there, can do a counter-proposal, saying, okay, the initiative goes too far, but we propose you that in 2 years we will change the law in such a way that we take up your needs and your proposals, and then the people can vote, you are in favor of the initiative or are in favor of the counter-proposal of the government. So it's an effective tool of putting your ideas into mainstream politics, adapted then to the mainstream to make it compatible with the majority's wishes. But sometimes there are cases like the case I mentioned before, where the government was strongly against it, and they voted yes, and the government then had to produce the implementation, even against its own will. And that's, again, the system. It's a bottom-up approach. Once the people have decided, the government has not leeway to decide, I do it or I do not. They have to do something. I think, yes, direct democracy is very important to channel all the separatist questions or unhappiness or unwillingness. Military service played a key role also. I think it has changed in the last 20 years. So I would say military service is still compulsory, but it's less interesting, it's less important nowadays. But we do not have a separatist movement. However, we had a movement once in the 70s where one area, one canton, part of a canton said, we are French speaking, we don't want to be in the German part anymore. And it took us about 20 years and about 10 votes, and then we created a new canton for them. So it's possible to, we had a separatist movement. It's the canton of Jura, created in 79. It's our last canton which was built because people were not happy the way it was. The system made it able. We had to vote first for these people, then the whole canton, they had to agree to divide, and then the whole Switzerland Confederation had to agree to accept the new canton. So it was a multi-layer vote. It's an interesting model also for Catalonia, actually. I don't know, we have many questions. Do we still have time? Or
Still we have time.
Okay, very good.
If you prefer, I can ask live questions.
No, it's okay. If that's okay for you, are there live questions too? Let me just, the EU Parliament, obviously we don't comment on EU Parliament, not being member of EU, it's not up to us to comment on it. Okay. Yes, there were questions, sir.
Thank you for coming. My question is about the New Zealand. How does your government approach the killings in New Zealand? Do you consider some measures to prevent the democracy and to prevent the issues like that? Thank you.
Thank you. We were shocked. We were shocked by the events. We condemned the events. We gave our sympathies to the New Zealand people and to the victims and to the families. Is it possible in our country? Yes, it's only one. You need only one guy with a gun, and if there are crazy people in Switzerland too. So it's a thing which could happen in Switzerland too, unfortunately. But still, I think you should not take the act of a single person as being a mainstream act. On the contrary, you should isolate what this guy did and not even sell it further or use it for your own purposes. It was terrible enough the way it was, but we should not start to change our way of life because of one crazy guy. I don't want to have security everywhere which infringes on my liberty, and this tension between security and liberty can move over time depending on how dangerous your life is or how the situation is. But you should keep a core liberty. In our country, Muslims are allowed they are there, they are 5%. They are allowed to use their mosques. Protection is being taken, but we cannot prevent everything. Yes, madam?
Mr. Ambassador, thank you for joining us here today. My question is about women in Switzerland. Actually, even in such a democratic country, we can see protests of wage gap and not having gender equality. So how would you evaluate the situation of women in Switzerland? Because we know that in the political level, the 30% of the parliament consists of women, but they still have problems with maternal leaves and their wage gap and their equality among their society. So I would like to hear your opinion on that.
Well, thinking that 70 women still were not allowed to vote, we made a big gap. Since the 70s, we have now in all levels of the government and in economy, we have women. But I agree with you, there is a glass ceiling also in the Swiss system. There is problems in making it possible to have children, families, and to make career. And we are not there yet where we should be or where we would like to be. And there is still some work to do. I think legally, from the laws and everything is there. What is not there yet is maybe the mentality, decisions in the households, who is going to work, who is going to take care of the children. And it is true also that in Switzerland we are a rather conservative society, or a liberal society in some ways, saying that we do not want to stay to middle with our family questions. We don't want to have this system where the state takes care of everything. But this means also that if you want to work and have children, it will cost you a lot. And there is a problem where we still are working. It's one of the big questions we have in political affairs in our country also. What are your expectations? It's easy, yeah? We are part of Schengen, so we follow the Schengen rules. Okay, and we associating ourselves to Schengen, we have to apply the same rules. So
Tell them to get visa from Germany.
I didn't say that, but it's where you're feeling it. But we have to consolidate our positions within the Schengen. So I'm sorry, I can't give you any extra value here. What is the average? I think I said it's about 40 times. And the billion trade, yes, it could be. Well, we are so integrated that I don't know if the figures would change. What would change, obviously, is that we are not included in the service. The common market services is closed. So if we had a membership, we would open up the services market, and this, with our banking system and so on, I think at this time this would be very interesting and would increase the economic integration and increase the trade volume as well. But it's already quite an impressive number, I must say, and we are really actually trying to diversify a little bit more with other parts of the world. Anyway, I think we have answered some questions. Thank you very much for your time and for your interest.
Invite our dean for presentation.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.